What is up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. For today's episode, I have a very special guest, Ali.
Hey y'all.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
What are you drinking?
Dutch Brothers. Watching this. You want to hook up? Sponsorship. Holler at your boy.
Okay.
So we're talking about gun control, huh?
Yeah, so today we are going to be talking about gun control and anything in relation to that. I know that you do have a little bit more experience than I do in the subject. So do you want to start by sharing your thoughts?
Where to begin? Trying to figure out where to begin when talking about this stuff is always really hard.
Yeah.
Because it depends on who you're talking to, right? So for me, I do believe that the Second Amendment gives us more than enough permission to carry a gun, but I do also believe that states should have the right to sort of regulate what's allowed in their state. And if you have a problem with it, maybe move to another state. But also, that contradicts what the Second Amendment says. So I'm very back and forth on states' rights versus what the Constitution says. Because I'm a constitutionalist, I do believe that that is ultimately what gives us permission to carry, permission to protect ourselves. And, you know, if we lose the right to own firearms in a responsible way, asshole criminals are still going to carry guns illegally.
Yeah.
It's still possible to make guns at home a lot easier than you might think. And the only people who are going to suffer are good law-abiding citizens if we lose our gun rights, again, because criminals don't care what the law is.
Yeah, that's very true, and I feel like I agree with that, with what you just said. And one thing that has stood out to me is that there are different laws for states, and something that I wonder is, why do you think that's necessary, if you think that that's necessary?
Well, I don't think it's necessary because technically every gun law is a violation of the Constitution. Second Amendment clearly states that we have... So I always forget the specific wording of the Second Amendment, but you know, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. So the right to keep and bear arms will not be infringed. I mean, you cannot make a gun law restricting gun ownership, which, you know, as a gun owner and a big fan of firearms, I think that responsible gun ownership is a good thing. I think that it's important. There's literally thousands of cases every year where rapes are stopped by a responsible person owning a gun, where murders, kidnappings, all kinds of horrible things are stopped by responsible gun owners. But I also kind of understand why a lot of people would be against guns, against the ownership of guns, especially AR-15s and like really dangerous weapons, because of the the high number of mass shootings we have in the United States compared to other countries. It sounds good on paper. I get it. I really do understand why a lot of people want better gun reform. There's always the argument of, well, the only thing that's going to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun, and that's fair, and that is fair. But what if we were able to stop that bad person from getting their hands on a gun to begin with? And I think that's where really solid mental health background checks come in. I kind of feel like I have a solution to the problem, because you have to give something to both sides, right? People who want less gun restriction have to get something out of it, and people who want more gun restriction have to get something out of it. So how do we do that, right? Is what do these two groups want? And it's a super overgeneralization, right? Because there's so many different demographics on both sides of the fence. You know, like, I'm from Atlanta. All my gay homies carry guns in Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? But you don't see that as much out here on the West Coast. All my liberal friends, they all carry. And they all carry because they say, I need to protect myself from gay bashers. You know what I'm saying? It's like, that's my right. Whereas on the West Coast, you have that a little bit. But most LGBTQ folks out here on the West Coast are very anti-gun for the most part. But it's you don't want to fall into the trap of overgeneralizing entire groups of people, right? So you have to operate based off the information that's been provided to you. So what does the left, super overgeneralization, what does the left want? Well, they want the ban of assault rifles, what they consider to be assault rifles. It's a made up term from the Clinton administration, because AR-15, it stands for Armalite Model 15. Armalite was the first company that made the AR style rifle. you know, with the first M4s and M16s and things like that back during the Vietnam War. And actually a little bit before that as well when they were in development, but that's not important. What is important is AR doesn't mean assault rifle. It just means Armalite or Armalite rifle. So I understand why people would want those banned because, you know, like I'm not even like a crazy high-speed shooter, you know what I mean? But like I can still drop 8 rounds in less than 2 seconds on a target the size of my fist with an AR. That's not hard to do with a little bit of training. So that in the hands of a bad guy or somebody suffering from some really dark mental illness issues, that person shouldn't get it, right? So how do we stop that from happening? A lot of these active shooters that we see happening, these young men, 99% of the time, young men get these guns from their family. Why the fuck weren't these locked up?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Why weren't the parents taking a more active role in their child's mental health?
Technically, isn't that also breaking the law to not have your firearms secure, even if it's...
State by state.
Okay.
I don't quote me on this. I'm not 100%, but I believe California and New York, you're required to have your guns locked up when you're not using them. Definitely the case in Canada for the few people who do own guns.
Okay.
If there's a fire at your house, you know what I mean, and the cops show up and they find that your guns aren't locked up separately from the ammo, you're going to prison.
In Canada?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Here, you know, most gun owners have a gun on their bedside table in case some asshole kicks in the door in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
Which, you know, some dude kicked in the door at my friend's house when she was just sitting on the couch one day, saw her, and then ran out. You know what I mean? He was there to rob the place, but what if he was there for her? You know? Some 17-year-old kid executed a pregnant woman in front of her husband and then shot him in the face. And he had just gotten home from Afghanistan. Some 17-year-old kid did that to a married couple, and she was like 8 months pregnant. You know what I'm saying? And he didn't even care. So it's like these instances aren't you don't want to become so paranoid that you can't live. You know what I mean? But it's important to have an active awareness that there's a lot of dark evil out there that, you know, we have to defend ourselves from without becoming hyper paranoid of, you know, being afraid of the shadows and shit.
Yeah.
I got a little off topic, but one of the things I wanted to focus on is what do both sides want? Left side wants more. If I was to pass a new gun law, I would make it federal over the entire, every single inch of the United States. And here's how it would work. Everybody who wants a gun, if you want a gun of any kind, no matter what it is, everybody gets a permit. Everybody has to have a permit to be a licensed, I mean to be a gun owner, period. Now, this is going to sound a little crazy at first to people who are on the opposite side, but we'll get to that in a second. So, everybody has to have a gun license, right? Everybody has to sit down with some kind of psychological professional with a doctorate for one hour session. That's it. And get cleared by them to make sure they're not a crazy person. But the good news about this whole plan is that if that law was enacted, or if I was to be the one to decide what the next gun law would be, it's like, yes, it's harder to get a gun now. But once you do have your gun, you can carry it anywhere. You can't do that right now. If I go to California or Washington, I can't bring my gun with me. That's outrageous. That's completely idiotic. I think that if there was a national license, that would give people the freedom to visit family members in other states without the fear of real federal prison time. You know what I mean? I shouldn't lose my right to protect myself because I want to go 30 minutes north of Vancouver.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's completely stupid. I should be allowed to bring my guns across state lines legally. Now, there are ways to bring your guns across state lines legally. Now, that's state by state, you know, how that works. But in most cases, if you're, like, moving and you're driving across the country because you're moving, you just got to lock your guns in the trunk, and the ammo and the weapons have to be separate, you know, locked up separately, which is completely reasonable. I get that. But I got called a sand nigger at a gas station one time.
Oh, no.
And they told me to get the hell out of there. And then, luckily, I was almost done pumping, and there was a group of very angry dudes who didn't like seeing a Middle Eastern-looking dude with a BMW convertible. You know what I mean? They didn't like that. And my guns were all locked up in the trunk because I was moving. This was in West Virginia. And so it's like, so just because I'm not a resident of the state, I don't have the right to protect myself against racism.
Yeah, that's crazy.
And possible bodily harm. You know what I mean? They had baseball bats and shit. I had to speed off because I had no legal right to defend
Yeah.
myself. You know what I mean? If I had pulled my
Yeah.
firearm out in that situation, I could have gotten into some legal trouble. You know, so it becomes a bit silly and convoluted because there's just too many factors to take into consideration because of the cultural differences between states. You know, people in California who have never been in a gunfight, who have never been victims of racism, who have never had, who have never been shot or had your ass whooped by the cops before, people who have lived a privileged existence. I can understand why a lot of them don't think that we need guns. It's not that we don't need guns; they don't need guns. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Those privileged people, they're the ones who don't need them, and that's fine. You don't want them, but don't try to take mine away. I spent a lot of time overseas in my life, you know, doing contract work in the military and all that fun stuff. But I do also kind of believe that states should have the right to choose what goes on in their state. You know what I mean? But I don't think that they should have the permission to fully restrict things. So here's what I'm saying. You want to ban AR-15s in California for civilian use? I get that, but in my opinion, that shouldn't be the thing. I think that if they want to, you have to have a compromise, right? It's like, no, we can't have AR-15s, but what if we could have them in California, but we did abide by the magazine restrictions, no more than 10-round magazines. You know what I mean? Because right now, California AR-15s, Cali compliant AR-15s are a fucking joke.
Why?
Because of the manner with which that they're set up. The magazines, they use this thing called, I believe it's called a bullet button, for loading and unloading them. It's a pain in the ass. You can't have a proper grip. I'm not 1,000% on the specificities of the restrictions there, but it ruins the entire experience. And if they could just allow Californians to have regular AR-15s, but tell them, hey, you guys can't have more than you know, X amount of 10-round mags, that's a fair compromise. But it's just that no one's willing to reach a compromise. Gun owners, we would like for suppressors, you know, commonly referred to as silencers, we would like suppressors to not cost $800, you know what I mean, for a good quality one.
Are they also not, are they illegal or are they...
They're not illegal, they're restricted. They're heavily restricted. They're considered a Class 3 item. So any Class 3 item is, you've got fully automatic weapons. Those are legal, but they are a Class 3 item. Suppressors, Class 3 item. And short-barreled rifles are a Class 3 item. So what that means is if you want to own any of those things, you can own them. But before you're allowed to take them home, you have to pass a additional background check through the ATF. You have to pay $200 for a tax stamp. And the wait time is about like 6 to 8 months. Actually, somebody I know has been waiting about 1.5 years because of COVID. Everything's been pushed back for their suppressor.
And that's only for Class 3?
Class 3 items, yes, ma'am. Okay. There are additional classes, but those are the hot 3 subjects. So like one Class 3 item is a short-barreled rifle. Any barrel on a shotgun or rifle that is less than 16 inches is considered an SBR, short-barreled rifle. And I think the reason they don't want people having tiny AR-15s is because they don't want people to be able to just put them under a jacket. You know what I mean? And just like they don't want such a dangerous weapon to be easily concealable.
This might be a really dumb question, but why is the AR-15 considered a very dangerous weapon?
I would say because of movies and TV.
So it's considered by some people, or is it actually considered that it is a weapon that's very dangerous?
I mean, yes, obviously, I would argue that it is a dangerous weapon, but in the grand scheme of weaponry, it's not nearly as dangerous as some others, but it looks the scariest, and it's in movies the most often, so because of that, most people tend to assume that it's more dangerous than it actually is, especially if you look at the, the 5.56 round, which is, also referred to as .223. The 2 rounds are almost interchangeable, but not exactly. It's a very small round. It's a very, very small round. When I have unfortunately seen people get shot with it before overseas, you'd be surprised how many rounds can zip through a couple of dudes that are on drugs and they just keep running like it's nothing. Then it takes them a while to bleed out down the road. But with heavier caliber rounds, that come out of like a wood rifle, you know what I mean? Like that doesn't look scary, that people aren't afraid of because they associate that old wood rifle with like grandpa's hunting trips. you know, people are like, oh, that one's fine. People can have those for hunting. Like, dude, that round is 3 times bigger. That'll take your fucking arm off.
Yeah.
But it doesn't look as scary, so people aren't as afraid of it. Because people rely on social media for their news more than books. You know what I mean? And the truth. So I think education is a big part of this.
Yeah.
You see these open carry advocate idiots who like to carry AR-15s and body armor while they LARP in a subway. It doesn't make any sense to me. What are you doing?
Yeah.
Why are you so desperate for attention? And they're like, oh, well, it's my right. Yes, well, just because it's your right doesn't mean you should. It doesn't make it right. You want to make like some mom and her kids uncomfortable? And those open carry idiots will argue that, well, it's our right. It's not my fault that family is uneducated on these matters. Well, those morons aren't taking into consideration that there's another school shooting or another public shooting, you know, every other day in this country, unfortunately. And people have a right to be afraid of some asshole with a goddamn AR on their back. Because how do we know that you're an open carry advocate at first? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I ran into some of those dudes when I was in Georgia, and I had nothing. I would walk right up to them and say I would just talk shit to their faces. And they're just like, it's not our fault that you're not educated. And it's just like, dude, I'm carrying right now, and I bet you all of your guns and all of your cars that I can take you all to the range right now and spank all you dudes on the flat range. But they're LARPing. Their lives are meaningless, and so they need to go out and get attention because they just play Call of Duty and they think that makes them soldiers.
Yeah.
Like they've never been in a real gunfight. They have no idea how much it sucks.
Do you think that the problem lies more on the side of like the mental health than?
I would say that's the most important part. The health industry in the United States is just a business. The higher you go up the chain and on the chain of command of pharmaceutical companies especially, it's all just a business. They don't give a single shit about people. That's where like socialist healthcare, you know, comes into play, where I think we can afford it. Anybody who says that we can't afford socialist style healthcare in the United States has no idea what a defense budget looks like, where we wasted $1 trillion on a jet that we're never going to fucking use. You know what I mean? That money could have cleared all student loan debt in the United States 10 times over, but they just literally threw it away because they wanted to make a jet that we ended up not using. The X-35. Thanks, DOD.
Yeah.
Thanks for throwing away $1 trillion for no reason. We can afford social. Listen, there's no reason why an MRI should cost $3,000. $3,000 in some. Now, that's obviously not always going to be the case, but in many cases, $3,000 for this scan. Some doctor needs 100 G's to do a procedure to fix a foot. Like it's highway robbery.
Yeah.
What the health industry is doing to this country. We can afford it. We just have to stop wasting money on $100 toilet seats, you know. And that's a reference to Department of Defense budget reports. Halliburton is a massive private security company that I actually have a great deal of respect for what they accomplished during the invasion of Iraq. But they also did some fuck shit. They literally embezzled $1 billion, which they had to give back to the government. And there was a bunch of high-ranking dudes in government at the time that owned huge pieces of the company. It's just...
It's too much on our faces. The
politicians, and I know it's such a stupid, generalized thing to say, but their desperation for taking money that doesn't belong to them from the taxpayers it's completely and utterly sociopathic and unacceptable. But that's a whole other subject. We're talking about gun control.
I think we're doing pretty good.
What does the right side get with my whole gun plan?
Yeah,
right?
you told me about the left side.
What does the right side get? Okay, we don't want suppressors to be Class 3 items anymore. We don't want SBR, short-barreled rifles, to be Class 3 items anymore. We want to be able to just buy those things. And if you would just... Fully automatic weapons, I think, should remain restricted. You can still get them, and they cost a fuck ton of money. But there's no I don't think that it's logical for an 18-year-old who doesn't even know how to pay bills properly.
What about, has there ever been a proposition about maybe waiting till you're 21 to be able to own a gun? And
well,
not
for
18?
pistols, you have to be in every state that allows firearms ownership. You have to be 21 years of age to own a pistol, 18 years of age to buy a rifle or shotgun.
Why?
Concealability. Because you have to be 21
I feel
to
like
carry.
it's too young to own something like that at 18 years old.
I would say I think it should be 21 years old for both. unless you're in the military. I think that if you're a veteran, you should be exempt from really any and all gun laws.
What about for the soldiers who have gone to war and are back now, but they're not like fully themselves anymore?
Okay, so I got, oh man, all right, so here we go, buckle up. So let's talk about cannabis and PTSD in relation to veterans and firearms ownership. So a lot of veterans who come home from the war, depending upon when they came back and what their experiences were, cannabis can be extremely beneficial to treating PTSD and PTSD symptoms, things like that. I know that it saved my life back in the day when I came home from my third deployment. Between my second and third deployment, I was a little messed up back then, and it really, really helped me. And then once I didn't need it anymore, I didn't need it anymore. Good to go. But there's a lot of dudes that are unable to ever stop using it. And they have to keep that to themselves because cannabis is not federally legal. It's only legal state by state. So let's say hypothetically, I smoked a joint 2 weeks ago. And then tomorrow I'm going out to my car and I get into an incident with a carjacker where he or she tries to kill me and take my vehicle. Happens all the time in this country, happens every day all over the world. Basically my point is I get into a justifiable shooting where I kill another human being and it's completely legal. They have to run my blood check. They have to do a full blood analysis on me, and I'm going to pop hot for marijuana. Technically speaking, I can go to federal prison for up to 25 years for using a firearm while under the influence of an illegal narcotic, which is absolutely asinine because I was not high at the time in the scenario. Because cannabis just hangs out in your system for up to 30 days, or 30 days and plus or whatever. So that makes a bunch of veterans afraid to use cannabis because most of us rather keep our ability to protect ourselves and stay out of prison. And so that leads to alcohol abuse and opioid abuse. And, you know, it's not as bad as it once was, but you hear, 22 veterans a day commit suicide, and that number has gone down a lot over the years. But at one point, that was the reality. Like 22 military veterans a day on average for a while, for a certain period of time, were committing suicide all over the world because they couldn't handle being home. And if they were just if they just federally legalized cannabis the way they do in Canada, where the police and the military are allowed to smoke over there now, which is great, people would get the help that they need. But a lot of veterans are afraid to seek mental health assistance out of fear of losing their right to protect themselves. And so they don't seek that help. I was all kinds of messed up for a while when I first came home. I totally get that. I would unload an AR and put it next to my bed just so it's like there. You know what I mean? Just so it's close by, and then after a while, you don't need that anymore. It takes time. But a lot of dudes, they're just stuck like that forever. You know? They'll always be that way. When you pick up pieces of your friends, you know what I'm saying? You have a right to be fucked up forever. And you do still have a right to protect yourself. So, going back to what your actual question was, what about folks who have PTSD? Some of them shouldn't own firearms anymore. And that's where it comes back to our other point originally about mental health and its vital importance.
Do they ever get like a test when they come back that they have to do to see where they're at?
There are these things called yellow ribbon events. They are mandatory now, where you and your spouse go to like a vacation destination. The military pays for all of it, and it's all about reacclimation to civilian life and all that good stuff. But hella soldiers just weren't showing up. And so I'll tell you what, say what you want about former President Trump. Thank God it's former president, but he did do a couple of good things. He drastically increased the budget of the VA, and that made it possible for a lot of dudes to finally start getting some help that they really, really needed. So the VA is getting better. It's getting better every day. It's still one of the worst government assistance organizations on the planet, but they are better than they used to be. So I think a lot more dudes are getting the help that they need now. But the problem is there's no follow-up. And a lot of times at a unit, when a soldier gets out of the military, nobody follows up with you to make sure you're okay at all. Nobody cares. 9 out of 10 units are, 9 out of 10 units they won't keep up with you. They won't see what you're up to, because you know, when you're in the military, you're very, very busy all the time. There's a lot going on, and when some dudes leave, because they come and go. Some dudes come and then they're gone forever, and then nobody really follows up with them. And I think that's a problem because there's no requirements for them to do any like mental health check-ins. You know what I mean, to make sure that they're okay. And a lot of times, some dudes will get out and then they will never talk to anybody at their unit ever again as long as they live, because they had, you know, a really bad experience while they were in. They realized it wasn't for them. They hated it. They might be bad soldiers. You know, there's all kinds of different reasons why people wouldn't talk to anybody at their former unit. I wish there was a little more oversight on that to make sure that people are, you know, mentally okay. I think there should be required meetings like with the VA, but the problem is they can't even keep up with all the dudes who want help. You know what I mean? All the people who want help aren't getting what they need as it is. So how are they supposed to keep an eye on everybody when they can't even keep an eye on the 10% that showed up for help? And it was all budgetary restrictions, but they've gotten better over the last couple of years. There are 3 dudes on my team that are on disability. And that never would have been possible if it wasn't for the budget increase 4 years ago. So it will get better. And also, younger dudes aren't as afraid of their feelings as dudes from my generation and older. You know what I mean? Most younger dudes, like, it's considered corny almost to be afraid of your feelings as a lot of these younger dudes are nowadays. You know what I mean? They don't prescribe to the normal, traditional concept of being a manly man. You know what I mean? A lot of them don't believe in that shit anymore. A lot of the younger dudes, they definitely don't harass the female soldiers the way the older fuckers did. I used to see, like, high-ranking dudes sitting at dinner in the chow hall with, like, a female private. You know what I mean? And you're like, dude, I'd never see him sitting there with a male private before. And that looks bad from the outside, but then you realize and you talk to someone and you're like, dude, I'm sitting with her so she doesn't get creeped on by, like, 57 other young service members. It's like a fatherly thing a lot of the time. Definitely not all of the time. You know what I mean? A lot of the time it is very creepy. But I try not to think negatively, you know what I mean? I try not to assume the worst. I look at that and now I try to think to myself, okay, he's being a fatherly figure, a good leader who's just having lunch with her so she doesn't get harassed by a pack of horny hyenas. You know what I mean?
What about, I also had a question about how there's different, you can have concealed carry and open carry. Do you think it's a good idea if everyone had to be concealed carry to, I guess, like, minimize the fear of people? Or
well, a lot of times the only dudes who are open carrying are, like, cops on duty. It's a little more rare that you see some dude with a pistol hanging out on the outside of his hip, and it's not accompanied by a badge and, like, a pair of cuffs too. A lot of dudes don't open carry like they used to. I prefer concealed carry. I think it should all be concealed carry. I think that it is your right to open carry a rifle or a shotgun if you choose to. It's 100% your right, but it's my right to tell you that you look like a attention-seeking tool, and you're not cool. You're not raising positive awareness. All you're doing is making responsible gun owners look like you, and you look fucking stupid. You look like a clown when you open carry with your LARPers walking down the street. Gotta go to Walmart real quick. Better bring the AK. What? It's the stupidest shit.
Is there any different, like, let's say, for example, small towns, and then you have, like, the bigger city type of vibe. Is there, like, a difference between the laws that they would have in that small town compared to the city, or it would just be, like, the whole state?
It's usually state-based. It's usually, and there have been situations, especially in the Southeast, where they like small government, so like there's way more counties in Georgia than there would be in a similar sized state on the West Coast. You know what I mean? Because they believe in small government in the Southeast, which is a good thing. You want as little oversight as humanly possible, because the government's supposed to work for the people, not the other way around. But no, it's usually state. It's state by state. Oregon is a strange one because they don't really they only recognize, I think, just a handful of other states as weapons licenses, And because Oregon has decided to do that, many other states no longer recognize Oregon's, which is childish and petty and stupid because Oregon has higher standards for riding a motorcycle, for getting your driver's license, for carrying a gun in the state. The standards are higher. So other states that don't have any of those training requirements, they should be happy to provide reciprocity with Oregon. But lawmakers are petty, so they're like, oh, you don't want to respect ours, well, we're not respecting yours. And that's what happened with concealed carry, which is why Arizona is the best one to get, because some states will only issue you their license if you live there, but other states will allow people who don't live there to mail in their request for a permit through their state. Like, Arizona's the shit. If you get your Arizona license, you can carry in, like, I think 35 states at least.
Oh, wow.
And you don't even have to live there. You just mail in your information or do it online.
So why are states allowed? Why are they allowed to tell another state that they can't be licensed to own a gun in their?
No. What they're saying is like, okay, so I have a license in Georgia that is expired, but let's say that it wasn't. My license in Georgia is not good in Oregon. I'd have to use Oregon's to carry here in Oregon. They're not saying that you can't carry in that other state. They're just saying, hey, you don't have our license. You have to get our license if you want to carry while you're visiting our state. That's what they're talking about.
But so who gives the state the permission to refuse to someone?
They do. I mean, they're the ones who make the laws. If they want to say, hey, New York, if you have a New York license, you can't carry in Connecticut because we just don't want to recognize it. It's up to the lawmakers of the state, you know. But whereas Arizona, you know, they're a Second Amendment friendly state, so they're like, no, everybody, as long as you got a license, you can carry in our state, you know, because it's all about the culture of the state. You know, obviously, depending upon where you are in the country, the culture is going to be similar to one another. So in the Southeast, the rules are more relaxed because it's more, especially like in Texas and Georgia and shit, the rules are a little more relaxed. Like in Georgia, you can carry in your car without a license at all. And you can carry as you're going in and out of the house. You know what I mean? And you can carry it into the range. You can do all of that legally in Georgia as long as you're above the age of 21, not a felon, without a license. But if you want to carry it into Walmart concealed and you want to go run your errands and have it hidden on you, you need to have your license. But again, they're more reasonable. Like before I got my license and I had my gun in the car, it was loaded. I got pulled over in Georgia. The gun was not in the trunk. It was in my door. I told the cop. He was like, yeah, it's totally legal here.
Yeah.
But he's like, go ahead and get your license so you can carry it, though.
Okay.
And so I did, you know. I was going to anyway. I was just waiting for it to come back.
Is there a state that you think, or maybe necessarily you don't agree with their laws?
California and New York. They make it impossible for law-abiding citizens to protect themselves in a reasonable way, especially New York. No, not especially. They're both equally bad. Their hearts are in the right place. On what they're trying to do, but they're not representing the people correctly. They're only representing the people in power correctly. Because you mean to tell me that people who are protected by men with guns say we can't have guns? You know what I'm saying? It's like, you passed a law saying that I can't have this, but the dudes that protect you and your family every single day have this. It's hypocritical nonsense. So President Biden, part of the reason he was elected is he swore up and down that he would pass common sense gun laws. I said that he didn't mean it. I'm not a Biden supporter, by the way, but I said that he didn't mean that he was going to do it, and he hasn't done it. And people are saying, well, what about the law he's trying to pass right now? Nobody's read the law because gun owners are fucking idiots half the time. Read the law that he's trying to pass. He's not going after AR-15s completely. He's going after some accessories, which it doesn't matter what they are. But the reason he's doing it this way is because he never had any intention of banning guns of any kind. He just had to say that shit so he would get elected. And now he has to do something small to seem like he's making good on his promise. So he's trying to make AR pistol braces an illegal thing, What the pistol brace is, remember I was telling you about how if a rifle is the barrel is shorter than 16 inches, it's an SBR. Well, if you want a tiny AR, extra 6 to 18 month background check, $200 goes to the government for a tax stamp, and then if you get approved, then yay, you can now own a tiny rifle. Well, that's where AR pistols come into play. It looks just like a normal rifle, but instead of having a normal buttstock on the back of it, the part that goes to your shoulder, it has what's called a forearm brace.
Okay.
That your arm is supposed to go through instead of mounting the weapon to your shoulder. Your hand goes through it, Velcro straps to your forearm, and then you hold this tiny AR like you would a pistol in front of you like this.
Okay.
Because they're small, so they don't weigh that much.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's holding the AR pistols out like this. What they're doing is they're still putting that part that's supposed to wrap around your forearm, they're just putting that part to their shoulder and firing it. Because technically, it's not illegal to misuse the intended purpose of a gun accessory. So, let me explain.
Okay.
Gun owners are using the forearm braces as a loophole to be able to have tiny rifles, so they don't have to pay a $200 tax stamp to the government, so they don't have to wait 18 months, in some cases, to get approval just so they can have a small rifle. So President Biden was like, oh, it's a loophole. They're just using that as a loophole to get around the SBR laws, the short-barreled rifle laws. And he may be right, he may be wrong. Either way, it's nonsensical. Just let people have their tiny rifles. So, for example, this is considered an AR pistol. That's actually considered a pistol, even though it looks like a rifle, because it's very short. It's shorter. The barrel is shorter than 16 inches. So, that's what the forearm
So
grip
what's
is
the
for.
difference between a pistol and a handgun?
You'll have to ask the ATF. I can't quantify it. It's there are some images I can send you to back up this part of the video from the ATF's website on how they classify things. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense because both of the things in this picture are pistols, technically, because of their rules. But let's say I wanted to put a proper rifle's buttstock on there, like a good solid one, a good proper one. I'd have to get I forget what the document is, but I have to go through the ATF, get an additional background check, pay the $200 tax stamp, and then maybe get approval to do it.
That is so much. I feel like
all that just to have a tiny rifle.
Yeah.
The laws haven't caught up with the times. It's a big part of it. So.
Do you think that there's gonna be some kind of solution anytime soon, or what do you think is going to happen?
I think eventually what will happen is most guns will get banned one by one, and we're just gonna have to suck it up and follow the laws, and then eventually we'll be like every other civilized country in the world, where gun ownership is much, much more rare. And I say that because all these dudes on the internet that talk shit about how they're gonna stand up and riot and start killing politicians and all kinds of crazy shit like that. If they're gun, they're all just talking shit. None of them actually mean it. None of them are about that life. And yeah, I just think that probably within the next 10 or 15 years, they'll end up banning AR-15s and AKs and all the stuff that we love. And 9 out of 10 dudes will just shut up and suck it up and follow the laws. Or those guns will get locked in their attic, and now we can't take them to the range for fun anymore. But I don't think they'll ban pistols. Yeah, or a boating accident is the joke everybody makes. So, no, officer, I know your records say that I have it, but I was lost in a tragic boating accident. I think a lot of dudes will do that.
Okay.
I don't think there'll be a revolution. So the closest thing to a solution would be a bill where both sides of the fence get things that they want. Gun owners, in my opinion, they'd have to get SBRs taken off the Class 3 list, suppressors taken off the Class 3 list, and we should be given a national firearms license so we can carry everywhere. And the other side, also a point for them would be the national firearms license, because I'll tell you what, as everybody in this room, in some way or another, being a member of the LGBTQ community, in some way or another, we need protection from crazy fucking homophobes,
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what, an armed gay doesn't get bashed. I wish a motherfucker would try to bash me. Armed Equality, good to go. Shout out to Piper, right over at Armed Equality. What's up? I'll text you a link to that page. It's really good. I got a bunch of their patches and stickers and shit. Armed Equality is that good shit. Other side of the fence, they get stricter background checks. States retain the right to ban whatever the fuck they want, but at a reasonable degree.
Is there a current like mental health check that people are required
Nope.
to do too?
Nope. In some situations, you have to conduct one to get your rights back, because let's say you were locked up for severe depression. You were put into a mental institute when you were 17 because you had a mental breakdown your first year of college. You would have to probably get a sign off from a doctor and possibly have a lawyer assist you in getting your rights back. Felons can get their rights back. A lot of people don't know this. If you're a felon and you did time and everything's done and you're completely good to go, you have to have a lawyer file certain paperwork for you depending upon your state, and you can get back your gun and voting rights. My boy was locked up for 4.5 years. He just got out. Shout out to Cobb County, Georgia. He just got out for trafficking. But part of the deal was he admitted full guilt and all that good stuff. And part of the deal was that he wouldn't be a felon. And so he could retain his voting and gun rights. Sounds fair. The government isn't always bad if you're honest. And, a lot of times if you have a good lawyer and you're honest and you suck it up and pay for what you've done, you can retain your rights. It's not impossible for a felon to legally own a firearm. Don't listen to the hype. It just requires a shit ton of paperwork to do it the right way.
What would you say to someone that has experienced a loss from a shooting or something, if that person was to say, hey, this is why I think that we should have more restricted gun laws?
I would tell that person, let's say I'm talking to a mother whose son was killed because of gang violence. I would say you should have done a better job at watching your kid, not let him fall into a gang, first and foremost. However, that's what I would say on the inside. You don't talk to nobody in real life like that. You know what I mean? What I would say to them is that their child probably did not deserve to die, and I couldn't even begin to imagine what they're going through. And I'm very, 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 very sorry. But just because you suffered a loss doesn't mean we should set up other people to become victims of the same thing. Your loss doesn't mean I don't have a right to protect myself. You know what I mean? And I'm very sympathetic, and I am very sorry for anybody who's ever been in a situation where they lost somebody because of gun violence. I, again, couldn't even begin to imagine what it must feel like to lose a child. It must be, it's worse than death. It's worse than losing anybody else. But that doesn't mean I want my wife walking around unarmed, going through downtown Portland, where it's a fucking dangerous city, or even worse, where I'm from, Atlanta. I don't want any of my loved ones walking around unarmed, just in case they happen to run into that one psycho. A bad thing happening to one person does not give them permission to restrict another person from protecting themselves.
I think the first thing that I think about is educating themselves. People, I feel like you do start losing fear of the things that you eventually get to know.
100%.
So if you do learn what, the difference in firearms and how to use them and the safety and how you can protect yourself and all of that, I think is like the key. I guess that's like my main point that I always go back to, that I think people should focus more on educating themselves.
You're absolutely right. And like I was saying earlier about how you can only operate based off the information that's been provided to you. Experience wise, first time I took the old lady to the range, she said that she was so nervous that she had really bad gas. No, she didn't say that. She said that she said that she was going to throw up because she was so nervous. And now you take her to the range, you would think that she's been doing it for years. She's hitting
Awesome.
she's hitting a torso she's hitting a torso sized target with a Glock 19 at 25 yards, dropping 6-round volleys in 8 seconds, which for someone with such little experience, she's really great. And all it took was some trips to the range, some good lessons, and patience. To all the dudes out there that think that they can just teach their women how to shoot because they own guns, take a class. Take a motherfucking class. You don't know anything. Take a class. Take a bunch of classes. Take a lot of them. Having all the Gucci parts in the world doesn't mean you know a goddamn thing.
Nope.
Just because you were in the military doesn't make you an expert on firearms and gun laws. Just because you were fucking in the National Guard for 2 minutes and were a goddamn Humvee mechanic. It's like, oh, I know about gun laws. I was in the Army. Doesn't mean shit. Take a class. Read a book. Think about things from other people's perspective. People who want to restrict gun laws, their heart is in the right place. They just want people to stop dying. I get it. I just think that they're going about it the wrong way. All my gay homies better have guns in these streets. Everybody. We ain't getting bashed today, cuz.
Yeah.
Not any day. All my fellow brown people, all my black people, get lots of guns legally. Take a bunch of classes. Cogworks, Haley Strategic Partners, Bear Solutions. Hell, even Costa Ludus, that nerd. Fucking YouTube. Yeah, there's plenty of great drills that you could learn, that you can just write down the notes on how it works, then go out and practice it yourself a bunch of times. So education, like you were saying. And you have to learn the difference between someone who knows what they're talking about and somebody who acts like they know what they're talking about. And I think the first thing there is admitting where your faults are. Like when it comes to, I don't know a whole lot about gun laws or whatever. We're just friends, and I know a little bit about this stuff. No, definitely no expert, obviously. If a real expert was to watch this video, they'd be like, yeah, fuck yeah, he's definitely not an expert. I think it's important. Like, I'm not the fastest shooter in the world, but I'm a pretty decent instructor. You know? Finding a good gun mentor, I think, is the first stop. And sometimes that can be a little tough. I recommend everybody look up as many instructional videos as they can and go take some real classes. Like Aaron Cowan at Sage Dynamics, he travels the country and is one of the best instructors in the world. Travis Haley is the best firearms instructor in the world. A lot of really good, solid teachers out there. There's so many schools to get good training nowadays. And not all of them are $800 for 3 days. The really like cool ones are. Those ones are. They're like $800 for 3 days. You got to bring 4,000 rounds of ammo, you know, per weapon. And yeah, you will leave at the end of that 3 days an incredible shooter just after 3 days.
And sore.
Extremely sore, extremely tired. Probably lost 5 or 10 pounds from all the running and gunning. But there's a class for everything. Different levels of pistol advancement, different levels of carbine advancement. You want to learn how to shoot shit that's 2 kilometers away? You can do that. There's classes for everything nowadays. It all comes back to good education, like you were saying. Do you just want to be that fucking Instagram warrior who posts all your cool stuff, or do you actually want to go and get some training? And actually be proficient with your weapons? You know, I run out of breath when I get to the top of the stairs, but I'll tell you what, I can still hit a couple targets when I do so, even when I'm out of breath. You have to know your own limitations. I know that if I have to, like, sprint up a bunch of stairs, that I really got to focus on my fat ass breathing. You know, it's being aware of your limitations. You know, and being realistic with yourself. I know that I would be second wind if I got into a real engagement, but I do know that I could survive the kind of engagement that I believe I would run into here in the States. I'm not clearing buildings anymore in Afghanistan and shit like that. You know what I mean? I think we got everything.
Cost of ammo.
Yeah, fuck the cost of ammo.
And, you know, availability.
Availability.
I'm trying to get a Glock 19.
Yeah.
And I'm just mad I can't get one of those. If I'm talking quiet, it's because I can hear myself very loud.
Yeah.
Oh, we can hear you though.
Okay, fantastic.
Yeah.
Gen 4 or Gen 5, or do you not care?
I'd want a Gen 5 just because, you know, I gotta get that new.
That new? Though, yo, those Gen 5 barrels they're the truth. They really are. How do we wrap it up? Okay. Get training if you want a gun. Find a good mentor. And you need to know that they know what they're talking about. If they say that open carry is something that is somebody else's problem and not your own, you probably shouldn't learn from them. They should. I just think that if someone's like a super duper open carry advocate, they're probably a tool. But what sucks is they're not technically wrong, which is the annoying part. Because it is my right. Just because it's legal doesn't mean that it should be okay. I'm hyper aware of not letting my gun fall out from under my shirt. Not fall out, but like not be visible is what I meant to say. And I always make sure my shirt's covering it because I don't want some lady and her, you know, kids to be uncomfortable. And I've had situations where like I'm reaching up on the top shelf of the grocery store and my gun gets exposed for half a second. And I look over and I see some lady and she gets scared and goes in the other direction. While that probably makes her technically ignorant, it's also a reflection of what the media has done to normal, everyday people. You know, it's an abnormal thing to carry a gun. And I understand that. After everything I've been through, I'm not going to not carry one, you know.
Yeah. All right, you guys. So that's going to be it for today's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you have any questions, don't forget to put them down in the comment section. And don't forget to follow us on social media. Till next time. Bye.
Bye.